All right, welcome everyone to our CARES Act webinar. This is part 2 of our series to process all of the wealth of information that's been flowing out from the decision makers and lawmakers in Washington. My name is Shannon Reed. I am the Executive Director of Montgomery Area Chamber of Commerce, and it's my privilege and pleasure to be working with our businesses through this time. I feel that this is what we were designed to do as a chamber, is to be here on the front lines with you, work with you closely to help you get this information, digest it all, and to help you navigate this time in our lives. It's just unprecedented what we're experiencing. I have with me today Kim Harris. She is an income specialist from Advanced Retirement Planning. She is a wealth of knowledge herself. She works with individuals here in the Montgomery area and the greater Montgomery County area as she works with them on their strategies, but she has been instrumental to collect the information during this time, and we've been working closely together. I just think we make a powerful team, Kim. I've enjoyed working with you on this, and she is going to take the lead in our workshop today. Last reminder for those of you just joining us, you'll leave your microphones muted, please. That way, if we have any outside or background noise, it won't startle or cover up Kim's presentation. And also, if you wouldn't mind, please put your questions as we go in the chat wall, and I'll be watching for those and make sure that we cover all of those as we go through the presentation. Kim will be recording this for us, and we'll have it for later digestion as well. So that will be great. We'll make sure that we have those resources made available on our chamber website so you can go back. And Kim is going to mention this in probably just a moment, but I will preface this as well. The information we get is changing on a daily, sometimes hourly basis. So please keep in mind that disclaimer that we want to make sure you understand is what we share with you today is definitely valid as of March 31st, 2020, and it could all change tomorrow, but Kim and I have even prepared ourselves to make this perhaps an ongoing presentation that may have to happen multiple times as things progress and change in this season. So with that, I'll stop rambling now, and I'm going to introduce and turn it over to Kim Harris. Thank you and welcome, Kim.
Thank you, Shannon. It has been a pleasure to work with you, and I know that Shannon and I over the last several days have been viewing and reading multiple volumes of information as they come out, and we are so happy to be here sharing with you, hoping that we can help make this new normal a little bit easier for all of you. So I'm going to get started, and our focus today is upon economic issues, not health or safety. And as Shannon said, information is believed to be reliable but is subject to change. I was listening to an online with the SBA as they were doing a Zoom webinar yesterday, and the host was saying, our information is changing hour by hour. And so he said, if you want to, he said, you just need to check back at the different webinars, because he said our information will be changing. So we're going to talk about government actions, both from the federal government and the state of Texas. So the Texas could benefit from $27 billion from the CARES Act, and below are the numbers on how it would be split up. So we're going to talk about payroll protection. It's also referred to as PPP, EIDL, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, We're going to be talking briefly about unemployment benefits and tax credits. And again, as Shannon said, please use your chat. Type in your questions as we go, and she will either interrupt and we will answer your question then, or we will wait till the end to answer your questions. So the Payroll Protection Program is a specific limited scope targeting payroll, rent or mortgage, and utilities. Now, who is eligible? There's a lot of small print in here, and I hope you all can read it, because this is really geared to 500 employees, whether you're full-time, part-time, or really any other status with a business. 501(c)(3)s with fewer than 500 employees, an individual who operates as a sole proprietor, an individual who operates as an independent contractor, an individual who is self-employed who regularly carries on any trade or business. And there are special rules, and Shannon has the links that I used to prepare this, where you can go and you can view all of these things that I'm pulling up and read them for yourself. So how much can you borrow? Loans can be up to 2.5 times the borrower's average monthly payroll, not to exceed 10 million. Now, this is important because there's excluded payroll costs. Excuse me, an individual whose annual salary is over $100,000. Payroll taxes, railroad retirement taxes, income taxes, those are excluded. An employee whose principal place of residence is outside the United States. And qualified sick leave wages. Those are the excluded payroll costs. So, how do I calculate my average monthly payroll costs? You take your sum of included payroll costs minus the sum of excluded, and that equals the payroll that you will be able to utilize. I need to move my bar to the top here so I can see my whole screen. Okay. So will this loan be forgiven, and how much is forgiven? So it's equal to the amount the borrower spent on the following items during the 8-week period of payroll costs: interest on mortgage obligation incurred in ordinary course of business, payments on utilities, and that's including electricity, gas, water, transportation, telephone, or internet. For borrowers with tipped employees, additional wages paid to those employees.
If I could jump in, if you'll go back one screen.
Yes.
Okay. So here is a great explanation that I think will make this simple to digest. 2.5 months of payroll that you estimate is approximately 10 weeks worth of payroll costs. What they are forgiving is 8 weeks of actual payroll. So you can see there that in your total amount that you borrowed, you should have some surplus that is beyond those 8 weeks of payroll. You've got 2 weeks left of money in that full total amount that you borrowed. With that 2 weeks left of money, that's where you will be able to utilize your rent or mortgage and your utilities. So they were taking the lawmakers, when they were doing calculations for this, to determine, all right, if we take a month's worth of payroll and multiply it out 2.5 times, we've got enough for about 10 weeks worth, and then we're covering pay for 8 of those weeks. We've got the remainder in their pocket for rent and utilities. There is some travel costs that can also be forgiven. They are itemized on some of the different depending on the type of employee that you have and what can be done, you'll have to read fine prints when you start looking at the PPP listings. And I've got those documents, and I can certainly get those up on the chamber website for easy digestion. But I hope that helps you just make sense of the gross number that you can borrow, and then what parts of that is forgiven. So technically, if you just spent on the forgivable pieces, then 100% of what you borrowed will be forgiven if you look at it that way. But there are opportunities in the Paycheck Protection Program. Those are the only items you can use it on anyway. So they should be 100% forgiven when it's all done. Okay. All right, Kim.
Okay, another item that I want to bring out is the way that you apply for payroll protection program is through the SBA. And Shannon can also, she can put on there the link on how to apply for that. I spoke
That
to,
it can also go through any lender, and they are extending
yes,
to all of our banks. They're extending to all of our banks the relationship to SBA, even if they weren't formerly an SBA lender.
correct. But what has to be filled out will be the form that's online.
Yeah.
And like Shannon said, you'll be talking to a local representative.
Kim, we have a question in from
Yes.
Ken Tomet, and he
Okay.
says, when you say payroll costs, are we talking net payroll or gross payroll? Now, remember, on the exclusions, if you'll go back to that page, Kim,
Yes.
there are some exclusions. So you will take your total and remove those exclusions, and you will come down to the payroll that you will calculate from. Yes, so you have to remove the exclusions. So there are taxes in there and some other things. So you are, I guess, in a sense, talking about net payroll at that point.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And this is taken off of a brochure that was put online by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce.
Correct.
Yes.
So when you're taking gross payroll and you remove all of these exclusions, you will end up with the net payroll that they will calculate from for 2.5 months.
Correct.
Okay, very good. Let's
All right.
move on to EIDL. Are there any other questions from PPP before we continue? Looking good. Okay, we're
Okay,
ready.
I do want to clarify. I was talking to an SBA representative locally here, and she shared with me that there are some people that have already applied, and that will still count for their application, but they still need to get in touch with their banker.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm going to scroll through this, get back down to where we were to talk about EIDL.
Good.
All right. EIDL has a broader scope. It includes coverage for other business expenses, but does also include payroll, rent, or mortgages, and utilities. And EIDL stands for Economic Injury Disaster Loans. EIDL provides working capital loans, loan advance of $10,000 in 3 days after a successful loan application is made to the SBA, and the loan advance will not have to be repaid. That is our understanding at this point.
Now, isn't that for the same 3 categories as the PPP? So the rent, the payroll,
Yes.
and the, so if you were to expend on some marketing and other things for business expenses, those items would then have a payback rate of interest, but I believe that those are going to be very low and very extended lengths of time. So the forgivable parts in both the EIDL loans and the PPPs will be the same three categories: the payroll, the mortgage or lease, and the utilities.
Correct, correct.
Okay.
So let's compare the payroll protection program and the economic injury disaster loans. You can utilize both programs at the same time, but you can't double dip in both programs. So for example, if you're utilizing the Paycheck Protection Program, then you can utilize EIDL for rent, mortgage, and utilities. So you can use both of them for different things.
And you can use the additional EIDL for the other parts that you may need in business expenses. Just keep in mind that those items may not be forgivable in those cases, but there are some situations I know for us in the Chamber of Commerce world right now, we are not on the acceptable users eligible for the PPP, but we can access the EIDL. The other difference there is the cap in spending. So the max loan is 10,000 under the EIDL at this time that you can get a quick approval for. So just keep in mind what it is your needs are and what your totals will look like. So how you want to access which dollars.
Yes, and again, since this CARES Act was signed into place, the federal government has been working with the SBA, and the SBA has been working with banking leaders. So this is all unfolding on how all of this is going to work.
I'll give you a perfect example. I was reaching out to my branch managers yesterday here in the Montgomery area for when they were going to have their PPP and accessible to the community, to the public. And none of them, with the exception of Spirit of Texas Bank, were ready to receive any applications. And I'm not even sure if Spirit of Texas was quite fully functional yet, because as our understanding from Washington, D.C., they're saying by Friday, everyone will have their ducks in a row. So as I was reaching out to the branches who didn't have their instructions yet, by the end of the day, I was already getting messages from those banks saying that they were rolling out their programs. So everyone across the board needs to take a deep breath, and we are going to have to stand in line for a little bit, but we need to give them the opportunity to get things situated and organized. This is on a massive nationwide scale that they are having to make these programs accessible to the public. So there's a lot of fine tuning that they need to finish.
Yes. We're going to briefly touch on Texas Workforce Commission for Unemployment. There is chargeback protection for unemployment benefits. There is a 1 week waiting period for the 1 week waiting period has been waived. I didn't put the waived in there. And there is a shared work program that allows for partial unemployment benefits.
So one of the biggest questions that has come up for small businesses in our community, and I know several have already had to close their doors and send their employees home. What is the best approach? Now, this will be on a case-by-case basis. Should you take the 8 weeks PPP plan, keep everybody paid and on your payroll, or would it be more economical for you to shut your doors and then let them collect the unemployment with no penalties to you as the employer, but keep them on your payroll? So you're going to have to determine the amount of people, the dynamics of keeping your business open and on limited staffing with this uncertain time that we're in. So those are decisions that are going to have to be individually reached. And I think the best approach would be to run the numbers both ways and see how your employees do. If you can find ways to maybe you have several employees doing this similar job. Maybe they are a stocker, or maybe they're a waiter, that if they were reduced to hours and now they're just sharing small hours of running stuff out to the car or doing delivery or whatever the case may be, maybe you can find a way to get them on that shared work plan, shared work program, and keep them on your payroll instead of doing the PPP. We'll see.
Yes. And if you do a mass layoff, the TWC has a rapid response unit that can help you with that.
Any questions about that before we move forward? Okay.
All right. Also keep in mind that we have payroll tax relief in the form of tax credits for companies with 500 or less employees. It's 100% dollar for dollar credit for costs of providing leave to employees, up to 80 hours paid sick leave and child care, includes health insurance costs, and it's equivalent credit for self-employed on 2020 tax filing. My understanding is that the tax credits can be used in conjunction with PPP and EIDL. Now, do we have any questions?
As we're waiting for questions, I'll just mention that the IRS has put together a page to help explain the direct deposits for the stimulus money that each person shall receive and how that will work. So it is per your filing, based on your filing either this year or last year, the most recent one. And married filing jointly is, I believe, below 150,000, and you would get the full 2,400, which is 1,200 each person, and then 500 for a child, a qualifying child, as that goes. So that information, they have already published a page on the irs.gov website to clearly explain how that will best work. I believe they'll be doing direct deposit if you file that way. And I think that they say now that most people are direct deposits on their returns.
And that's different than the payroll tax credits.
Correct.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, any other questions? Y'all are being awfully quiet.
Yes.
We have lots of people here and we would love to help answer any questions that you may have or certain scenarios. Well, y'all have been a fabulous class. You're hired. We're going to take you on the road with us.
I want to thank you all for attending today, and you can funnel your questions through Shannon or myself, and we will collaborate and point you to the right direction.
Absolutely. And as things progress each week, Kim and I will stay in touch and we'll see if more things need to be discussed. This webinar has been very popular so far. Last week, as well as this week, we have recorded it. We'll make these available on our chamber webpage. I'm just glad that we could bring this and just make heads or tails out of some of this for you so that you could quickly respond. And I'm so glad that you were able to join us. All right. Well, have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much.